You see Andy Staples is on 3, the Andy Staples Show. He and Ari Wasserman do a video show there daily, just like us at On 3, talking a lot of college football. He's got his top 25 out, post spring, post portal, post coach moves, post everything, I guess. What is up, Andy? How are you, man?
It is a lot of those things. I guess it's post coach's girlfriend's melting down, although I don't think I was going to have North Carolina in there anyway, but now I'm glad I left him out.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, listen, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but I lived through a post-spring coaching change at Alabama once. Now, the situation was totally different.
Well, there were some characteristics that were the same.
There was a Panhandle strip club involved, I believe.
Yes, there was. Indeed.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
And my price does not have Bill Belichick's resume, but is there any scenario here that at any point North Carolina's money people get fed up with this storyline that's out there?
Like, do you believe it was
change coaches?
Like, do you still believe a lot of the price stuff was driven not necessarily by the stripper story, but by people still thought it was a mistake and this was the easy way to undo the mistake?
Yeah, I don't think it was 100% that they wanted Mike Price in Tuscaloosa, and some of the money people use this as an opportunity to do a change.
I think the money people drove the Belichick thing, because I think the Bubba Cunningham, their athletic director, wanted to make a more traditional hire. And I think, he was hoping that maybe they could get John Sumrall from Tulane or somebody like that. And I think the people with the money got very excited at the possibility of getting Bill Belichick, because at that point we didn't realize how serious he was about coaching college football, but he was casting lures out there with people who had jobs open and had made it very clear, hey, I'll take this. I want to do this. So, I think those are the guys who got really excited. And so I don't know that they would be ready to pull any ripcords quite yet, but it is so weird. Now, the thing about it is, if he's good, I don't think any of this really matters. I think this is kind of off-season circus, doesn't really affect anything. And you notice, we haven't heard anything about the actual football. They did a very thorough job of making sure nobody knows anything about that actual team. So I don't know where this goes, but it gets weirder and weirder every day. And it's not what you expect from a guy. Bill Belichick controlled every aspect of the media exposure for the Patriots for the longest time. There were parts of it with Tom Brady, I think, that he couldn't control there at the end. But it wasn't like this. I mean, this is a circus. And it's very strange. Now, highly entertaining, but very strange.
You've got your post-spring top 25 out at On 3. Andy Staples with us on the Shannara hotline, the Alexander Shannara Trial Attorneys hotline. I'm going to start in a weird place. Normally, you start with your local team. You start with number one. I'm going to start in a strange place with you because we just discussed, Jim was showing the graphics of teams that had the most blue chips out of the portal. We were discussing Heisman Trophy yesterday. Jim dropped I did not realize it had changed this way, that Garrett Nussmeier was the not the odds-on favorite.
He was in the mix with Arch Manning as a betting favorite.
As a favorite. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got LSU 15. Did you not see any of this stuff? Did you not know they killed it in the portal and that Garrett Nussmeier is apparently Heisman Trophy good?
Oh, no, I know they killed it in the portal, and I know that Garrett Nussmeier is good. And if he develops in year two the way some of these last LSU quarterbacks have developed between year one and year two of their starting tenures, then he's going to win the Heisman, because that's what the last two did. But I also think that they are probably, about in line with some of these other teams in the SEC. That they lost to Florida last year. Are they significantly better now than they were last year? I don't know. They lost a first-round offensive tackle. They lost another offensive tackle in Emory Jones. They did do more in the portal this year than they did last year, but here's the thing, when you're getting guys out of the portal, when you're trying to move from being mediocre to pretty good, you can go in the portal and really do that. When you're trying to move from being pretty good to national title contender caliber, I don't know that what you need is necessarily available in the portal if you have a lot that you need. And LSU had to get starters on the offensive line, starters in the secondary out of the portal. You need freaks. You need guys that are going to go to the NFL after 3 years, not guys that are still in college after 3 and 4 years. So that's the question I have, is they have gotten some really good college players out of the portal, but they're going to play against 3-and-out NFL guys in the SEC that may just be better. They're going to play against 3-and-out in the NFL guys at Clemson in that first game. Like, that's the part. They've got to be better than those teams if they're going to win a national title. And so, are they more talented than those teams right now? I don't know. They're going to rebuild the offensive line. They need to show us that they can run the ball. I don't know that that's necessarily a knock on their talent. I think that if you watch last year, a lot of the, like in terms of the play calling, they would abandon the run when they didn't need to. Like, go back to that Florida game. They're actually running the ball fairly well in the second half, and they just stop. And it may have cost them the game. So that's the part I need to see. And I will tell you, though, guys, I can see a path. Like, I understand when people say, I just talked to one of my coworkers who said, I think LSU's my dark horse national championship pick. And, like, I get the path. And there's certain things I really like. Like, they've got a freshman named DJ Pickett from Zephyr Hills, Florida. He's a freak 6'4" cornerback.
Wow.
Like, that's the type of thing LSU used to have a bunch of. LSU used to have a bunch of freaks coming in every year who were going to be at LSU for 3 years and go to the NFL. And when they won national championships, it's because their rosters were loaded with those. They've not been loaded with those of late. So that's my question, is how many of those are there? Because if they've got more of those, then they got a shot.
Bad to good Auburn, and you've got them in the really good category, 13th in your preseason ranking here. Is it because Hugh has sort of done it hybrid? He's done it really good in high school recruiting and some good key portal pickups?
That's a piece of it, but also just looking at last year, I mean, slightly better quarterback play, and you're probably talking about an 8-4 team,
right,
rather than a 5-7 team. Auburn offensive lines have not been particularly great in the last decade or so. The one last year wasn't bad, and then they went in and went to the portal and not necessarily grabbed guys that they said you're guaranteed to start. They grabbed guys who were starter quality who were going to have to come in and fight for jobs. So they created some competition there. They go out and get Jackson Arnold, and they go out and get Ashton Bailey. They sign Deuce Knight. So they have competition in the quarterback room that should theoretically produce a better starter. We're assuming Jackson Arnold here. And look, if we're talking about Jackson Arnold, it was a Murphy's Law situation for him at Oklahoma last year. Everything that could have gone wrong did. Like, the offensive line was not very good. Their top 5 receivers were out most of the season. So if you're Jackson Arnold, you're looking at a pretty good offensive line coming back. You're looking at Cam Coleman on the outside. Eric Singleton Jr. comes over from Georgia Tech, and you're going to play Where's Waldo with him. Like, I get pretty excited about what they could be, because those games that were kind of one-possession games last year, they may flip to Auburn this year. And all of a sudden, that's not just a team that goes to a bowl game. That's a team that wins a bunch of games.
They also have Keldrick Falk, which could be Auburn's first-round draft pick in a little while. One of the best pass rushers in the game. I mean, that's a guy that he can change the game for DJ Durkin.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Auburn brings back a lot of talent, and like you guys said, that they're doing it in both ways. When they have a need, and like the Singleton thing is a great pickup in the portal, because if you look at Georgia Tech last year, they didn't have anybody like Cam Coleman to distract from Singleton. So defenses kind of had to key on him, and he still made plays. Like, watch that Georgia game. He was making plays. But I think his capability gets more unlocked when there's another receiver that you've got to worry about out there. But like you said, you have Falk rushing the quarterback. You've got NFL players all over that defense. And I look at them last year, and yes, the record sucked, but we all know why it sucked. And we know how close a lot of those games were. If you just flip the results of some of those tight ones, you're a much better team. Like, the record is much better, not just a little better.
Andy Staples is with us at Andy_Staples. He is on the Shannara hotline. That's where you follow him on social media, at Andy_Staples. On 3 Sports, he and Ari do the show all the time right there. You can see it at On 3 Sports on their YouTube page as well. Do everything for them we ask you to do for us. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe, set your alerts so you know when they're live. How would you characterize basically the John Mateer, Jackson Arnold transition there? Is it big downgrade, obvious downgrade, not downgrade, upgrade? I mean, how would you do that for Oklahoma? You just talked about Jackson Arnold for Auburn. John Mateer comes to Oklahoma. How do you characterize that move?
Well, I think John Mateer was the best quarterback in the portal.
Yeah.
I think he has a chance to be one of the best QBs in the country. So now as far as the John Mateer, Jackson Arnold thing, I don't even look at it as, because yes, Jackson Arnold came from Oklahoma, but that deal was set up. They brought Ben Arbuckle from Washington State as the offensive coordinator. He was bringing John Mateer. That was part of the deal. So it's not like there was an option where Jackson Arnold stays at Oklahoma and wins the starting job. They hired Ben Arbuckle because part of hiring Ben Arbuckle is you get John Mateer. So it's one of those where Jackson kind of got, caught in the wash there. But if you watched Washington State play last year, you're like, oh, well, I get it, because John Mateer replaces Cam Ward, looks as good, maybe better than Cam Ward did as Washington State's quarterback. Now, I realize that it's not quite the same competition that they were playing in the Pac-12, but when they played Texas Tech last year, John Mateer lit them up. And he's the type of guy that can make plays within the structure of your offense, but also keep plays alive. And he, in terms of if you're comparing him and Cam Ward, who were playing the same offense, back-to-back years, you're going to do more direct QB runs with John Mateer than you will with Cam Ward. And so I think Oklahoma has an opportunity to be much better offensively. Now, the offensive line should be better. They had a weird situation where they essentially punted on the 21 and 22 classes on the offensive line. And so they had some decent players that were younger that they'd brought in, but probably weren't quite ready yet. I think they're going to be better on the offensive line this year. We'll see about receiver, because obviously they had the horrible luck. The bad luck has continued because they get this guy, Giovanni Gibson from Arkansas Pine Bluff. He's lighting it up at spring practice. They think he's going to be a great receiver for them. Breaks his leg. Now they think that he may be able to come back and play some this season. But just continually having horrible luck at receiver. And, oh, by the way, I don't know if you guys have seen this. If you look at Oklahoma's schedule, the last 7 games of Oklahoma's schedule looks like the hardest 7-game stretch I think I've ever seen in my life. It's going to be brutal. Yeah. So they're going to have to be significantly better offensively to be better this year.
For those that haven't looked at it, after they play Kent State, Andy is not including that game, they play the Red River game at the Cotton Bowl. They're at South Carolina. They host Ole Miss. They're at Tennessee. They get a probably much-needed bye. They're at Alabama. They host Missouri, and they host LSU.
That's right.
That is a gauntlet to finish.
Missouri's the break.
Awful.
Missouri's the break in that schedule.
Thank God we got Missouri this week.
And Missouri won 10 games.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, and truthfully, Oklahoma.
Or 9 games.
Oklahoma was a tough schedule last year. It was just that Florida's schedule was so outrageously tough that we didn't talk enough about Oklahoma's being tough, but it was a tough slate.
Exactly.
Last year.
They both are playing basically the same. The difference is Oklahoma adds Michigan this year, and Florida has to play Miami, but they took UCF off the schedule, I guess, and Ole Miss might not be as good. That's pretty much it.
That's the only difference.
It's amazing how it shakes out, because the SEC schedule is definitely not created equal.
Yeah, and Georgia gets all theirs at home this year as we get ready for SEC Media Days in Atlanta coming up in just a few weeks, and we're only 116 days away from week 0. Andy, I'm old, but I remember when I was a kid reading Kirk Bowles' stuff out in Texas, and he wrote this morning that I'm sure he sat around back in the day. I don't know if Kirk drinks or not, but I'm sure he was around big drinking, bourbon drinking, cigar smoking Texas boosters who used to brag about how much money they paid for players. Now it's legal, and he writes today that Texas's roster this year is going to cost them between $35 and $40 million. I'm not blaming On3 Sports like some people in college sports like to do, but it looks like the price has almost gone up 30%, 40%, 50% to do a roster from last year's Ohio State roster, which we all went crazy over.
Well, we knew that was going to happen, because when the House settlement gets approved, the House versus the NCAA settlement, when that gets approved, the schools are going to be able to pay, and they can pay up to $20.5 million a year. And we all know they're going to pay more than that. Ones that want to win the national title are going to pay more than that. But remember, schools like Iowa State, schools like Wake Forest could barely pay anything last year. This year they can pay, $20.5 million for your whole athletic department. Usually 75% of that's going to go to football. So if you can suddenly pay $12 or $13 million, where last year you could only pay 2 or 3, guess what? That drives everybody else's prices up. So the Ohio States and the Texases and the Oregons have to pay more as well. So yeah, there's it's a bubble this year. It's a much higher number this year. I don't suspect it's going to continue doing that because this is a kind of radical shift that was planned for this year. And yeah, it has created some definite sticker shock in the transfer portal because there's so much more money in the system that it's got to go somewhere.
Before you go, Andy, James Franklin has always struck me as a touch thin-skinned. We saw it after the Ohio State game, and I understand that was an emotionally charged game there. But man, a spring game is anything but emotionally charged. And I don't know what was said. Maybe it was warranted. I don't know. But man, this is not the first time this guy has gone after a fan. And to do it at a spring game, Andy, just seems to make it an even worse look than it normally would be.
Yeah, you got to let some of that stuff go. Like it's just not productive because it's strange because these guys should be pretty happy. Like the fans should be pretty happy with Franklin. Franklin should be pretty happy with his situation.
Yeah.
I look at where Penn State is, and everybody's gonna have flaws in this era. Like it's gonna be really hard to stack a team the way Ohio State was stacked last year, the way the Georgia teams were stacked the last few years. And Penn State, if you look at them, their one glaring weakness was wide receiver. They seem to be addressing that in the transfer portal. They just got a commitment from Trevor Pena from Syracuse this past weekend, who is a really productive slot receiver, to go with Kyron Hudson, who they got from USC, and Devontae Ross, who was the number one receiver at Troy last year. So, like, I'm not sure what everybody's mad about.
I know.
At Penn State. That's the part I don't get. Like, what are we even arguing about at this point?
I mean, it's the most sustained success they've had since, vintage Paterno.
That's right.
And yeah, it's like everybody's on edge.
And you're coming off your best year.
You got a good defense. You got a good offensive line, good running backs. Your quarterback is all the NFL scouts think he's the best thing since sliced bread. Everybody should be singing Kumbaya right now.
No, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I get the feeling Andy is not in love with Drew Aller right there when he says all the NFL scouts says.
Yeah.
No, he's perfect from a measurable standpoint. He's what you create in a lab.
Right.
But the production hasn't matched that.
I agree with you.
I think he would admit that himself. Now, it may be that he hasn't had the receiver talent around him. Obviously, Tyler Warren was great, but Tyler Warren was the only one anybody was worried about last year. If let's say there's 3 or 4 guys that suddenly you got to worry about him throwing the ball to, it may open up what he can do too. So I don't know. But the last we saw him was throwing a really bad interception when they had a chance to go win the game against Notre Dame and play for the national title.
At Andy_Staples on 3 Sports. Go watch ENRE every morning talking college football. They do a great job with it as always. Thank you very much for the time, Andy. Always wonderful catching up.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Take care. Andy Staples with us on the Alexander Shinara Trial Attorneys Hotline on 3 Sports at Andy_Staples.